Governors of Arizona and Texas are warning of a growing crisis as border communities are seeing a record number of migrants this year. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is now reporting nearly 2 million arrests at the southern border in just the last 10 months.
This is your maximum that you could do, and one thing we haven't mentioned is technology. They're wired so that we will know if somebody's trying to break through, and you may want to discuss that a little bit, General.
Sir, there could be some merit in not discussing that.
Okay? I like that.
As border communities like Eagle Pass, Texas, are overwhelmed by the record number of migrants. Our cameras capturing several groups crossing the Rio Grande River with young children hoping to request asylum.
The United States-Mexico border is the most frequently crossed border in the world, seeing over 350 million legal crossings annually, and an unknown but predictably much higher number of undocumented crossings. This great migration has been driven in part by unprecedented levels of crime and homicidal violence in the Northern Triangle countries of Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, whose emigrants constitute the highest percentage of people crossing the border today. In response to the increased demand for cross-border transit, organized criminal groups like gangs and drug cartels have continued to expand and professionalize their underground networks with the vague promise of helping migrants make it across the border. In an effort to stop illegal migration pathways on the United States-Mexico border, namely those used for transnational criminal and human smuggling operations, the United States and Mexican governments have invested heavily in securitizing their national borders, particularly through artificial intelligence, or AI, technologies. Given that securing the border requires far more than just physical infrastructure, substantial funding has been allotted to the enhancement of border technologies that can, in mere seconds, find and detect illegal migrants, a process that would have otherwise taken Border Patrol officials hours. Such advanced technologies, while seemingly more efficient, raise a vital question. How might enhanced border security impact migration?
Smugglers and traffickers are going to have to move more quickly, which will mean leaving behind slower travelers. And I've heard that this has already been the case since a lot of this technology has been implemented. They've been finding a lot of lone travelers who have been out in the desert for a day and a half or longer. So I think we're definitely going to see more migrants left behind who need medical attention. I think that some traffickers are going to start trying to force more individuals through checkpoints. And although that hasn't been a big percentage of trafficking in the past, I did see that. And many people question, well, how can you have this woman in the survivor's case? It was a woman. How can you have this woman who doesn't even have her trafficker with her? She's by herself and she is moving through the checkpoint by herself. She's answering the Border Patrol's questions. How is she a victim of trafficking? And that does happen. And so I think traffickers will definitely try to force individuals through checkpoints. I think vehicles will be with hidden compartments might become more sophisticated. I think advanced smuggling and trafficking operations might even try to hack or pay someone to hack into CBP's cameras and systems. Like, people are going to know that those are there. And in the cyberspace, hackers for hire are so available. There's no shortage of them, and it's not even expensive whatsoever. You know, bad actors, like anything, they're unlikely to give up, and some will even enjoy this new challenge.
In short, extreme high-tech prohibitive measures on one front are likely to generate extreme reactions on the other front, which may need to be predicted and mitigated in time. To face this dilemma, one needs to explore this essential question. What extreme measures will migrants likely take to cross a highly securitized border? as Mexico received an alarming influx of expelled migrants. Cities on Mexico's northern border became inundated with makeshift tent camps, where disease, crime, gang violence, and trafficking pervade.
This migrant tent camp has just sprung up in Reynosa, Mexico, in the middle of town. Really, it's right across the border from McAllen, Texas, and there are hundreds of migrants
La verdad es que yo vine huyendo de mi país porque allá no se puede vivir. Me vi obligado a salir huyendo primero con mi hija, de Honduras, porque pues últimamente las maras han incrementado demasiado en nuestro país y hay más delincuencia que trabajo. Ajá. Y luego tengo 3 niñas y pues dependen de mí.
Entonces no teníamos, pero nosotros buscábamos la idea de ver cómo hacer. Ajá. Entonces teníamos una ropita, ella tenía una ropa y ¿qué hizo? La fue a vender para poder nosotros comer.
Pero no queremos entrar a Estados Unidos a hacer daño.
No.
Ni a quitarle la oportunidad a otra persona de trabajar. Tampoco. Queremos salir adelante. Sí. Ir a trabajar como todo mundo sin hacerle daño a otra persona. Ajá. Y pues por nuestros niños.
The major questions here is whether the Biden administration's message of do not come will fall on deaf ears. Many of these migrants just haven't been listening to that message. Instead, they've been hearing from human smugglers, where they pay thousands of dollars to get here, and those smugglers are feeding them information, misinformation, telling them that it'll be much easier to get into the United States than it is, and when these migrant families get here, they are sorely disappointed.
Monday night, Rick is off. I'm Shari Williams. The big story on Action News tonight is breaking news. At least 46 people were found dead inside a tractor trailer tonight in Texas, and 16 others, including 4 children, were rushed to area hospitals in varying conditions. Police and Border Patrol agents surrounded the 18-wheeler in San Antonio after the truck was found abandoned around 6 o'clock. Authorities believe it was part of a human smuggling operation.
There are that we know of 46 individuals who are no longer with us, who had families, who were likely trying to find a better life.
Tragedies like the one in San Antonio are all too common. According to CBS News, the number of casualties for migrants attempting to cross the border has skyrocketed catastrophically since the pandemic, with the death toll of migrants increasing from 247 people in 2020 to 853 people in 2022. Understanding that efforts to further securitize the U.S.-Mexico border have inevitably compromised human security, there remains this vital question. How can the fragile balance between enhanced border security and migrant desperation be protected? At the core of striking a balance between enhanced border security and escalating migrant desperation is the issue of renewing a fruitful dialogue between the governments of Mexico and the United States.
We in the Western world are facing labor shortages related to individuals who do things that we can't get our own population to do. And we have birth rates in our own populations which are plummeting. And you see this not just in our society, but in many middle-income societies around the world. I think that starting to think about that more creatively and thinking about working with refugees and refugee populations in a structured and conscious manner is actually really important.
Today we're going to be discussing our shared challenges we face and commitments on some of the major issues that we're taking on together. One of those is migration. My administration is leading the way to creating work opportunities through legal pathways. And last year, my administration set a record, issuing more than 300,000 H-2 visas for Mexican workers. We also reached a 5-year high in the visas we issued in Central Americans. I want to thank you, Mr. President, We're also stepping up and increasing worker visas in Mexico for Central Americans. This is a proven strategy that fuels economic growth as well as reduces irregular migration.
Policy experts in the matter concur that Mexico's migration policies may require extensive and collaborative efforts between the country's national legislature and subnational government bodies to create laws that address short-term migrant resettlement, integration, and transit assistance, as well as long-term solutions addressing the root causes of migrant desperation. These long-term solutions demand collective action amongst the Mexican government, non-governmental organizations, and everyday civilians. According to the Congressional Regional Service, the United States Congress is also considering legislation that has significant implications for U.S.-Mexico border migration, including creating more border processing centers and continuing to fund and oversee U.S. foreign assistance projects to Mexico. Despite these efforts, however, the future of the U.S.-Mexico border remains uncertain. With this in mind, it is evident that policymakers must find more pointed ways of tackling the ongoing human and border security dilemma. Ultimately, both Mexico and the United States border policies need to be reimagined through a human security and domestic security lens that does not sacrifice one aspect of security for the other.
You know, we never locked our house. We never locked our vehicles. We just felt safe here. We didn't feel like we had to. We've owned my family's ranch in Kinney County since the late 80s. And we've always had, some traffic coming through here and illegals, but never the surge like we've seen in the last 6 months. We are fearful and we're afraid in our own homes. And so we've had to get an alarm system. We've had to keep everything locked and just really be cautious.
Because there isn't enough Border Patrol to respond to the traffic that's coming through it. This isn't a humanitarian deal anymore. This is securing the border.
Yo no quise, le digo yo, que me le hagan daño a ustedes. Prefiero que me hagan daño a mí y no a mis hijos. Yo le digo, yo tenía que huir por ustedes, no por mí, sino que por ustedes. Y le digo, Dios no se preocupe, que Dios nos va a abrir el camino para estar allá. Y allá usted va a cumplir todos sus sueños. Y perdóneme por traerla a sufrir.
The fact of the matter is, a failure to adequately address both issues of human security and border security will likely result in catastrophe for all stakeholders, from the rancher in southern Texas to the single mother in Honduras seeking a better life for herself and her young children. With this in mind, how does a reimagined approach to human and border security look, and who is responsible for its actualization? What new policies need to be implemented, and which actors will play a role in the formulation and enactment of these policies? Solutions must emphasize protecting the most vulnerable people, including the multitude of desperate migrants, for the sake of ensuring a better, safer future for everyone involved. Nonetheless, it is unclear where and how the work starts. No multilateral treaty specifically addressing the conflict between human and border security has ever been done before. The magnitude of this crisis is far-reaching, and the U.S. and Mexico have the chance to positively transform how migration conflicts are mediated in the future if the crucial work is done now.